President Dustin Hurst here with another update on the race for Superintendent of Public Instruction. Now, this week there have been two debates on this race, which is a key voice in Idaho's education sphere. This person directs lots of spending, has a very big influence on education policy in the state of Idaho. So suffice it to say, this is a big race that people should pay attention to. We have two candidates that are vying to replace outgoing Superintendent Sherry Ybarra. So we have two candidates vying to replace outgoing Superintendent Sherry Ybarra. There's Republican Debbie Critchfield and Liberal Democrat Terry Gilbert. Now, as I said yesterday in my video that I did about the first debate, Gilbert's position is very, very clear. It can be summed up really in two words. Two words.
Vulture vouchers.
There you have it. Anybody who uses that phrase, vulture vouchers or voucher vultures, is adamantly opposed to the idea of parents controlling where money goes, which is funny because that's how our food stamp program works. We give people money and they spend it at Winco and Albertsons and Fred Meyer and Ridley's, not at the government food store. There isn't one. But apparently you are a voucher vulture if you support giving money to parents to do the same thing that the food stamp program does right now. What's less clear, and what I commented it on yesterday, is the position of the Republican candidate, Debbie Critchfield. Now, over the last 2 years, I said this yesterday, over the last 2 years, parents have been absolutely clamoring for answers on education. And most of them, at least on the conservative side, have come to the point where school choice or education freedom, whichever term you want to use, is the answer. Government schools are the answer for some people. That's a fact. Maybe there are kids who work best in government schools. We'll see. But for government schools to work for everybody, that just doesn't work. Your kids are too unique. They're too different to work to have those schools work for everybody. So online school might be an option. Private school, which is actually cheaper than government school, by the way. They don't want you to know that. Maybe a learning pod is what you need. Maybe, there are myriad options and some that we probably haven't even thought of yet. So parents are asking for this. Unfortunately, the Republican is supposed to champion these ideas. You see in Arizona, Governor Doug Ducey and the Republican-led legislature have passed an aggressive education freedom package, and parents are they're literally crashing the website to make sure their kid's name gets on the list. And again, as I said yesterday, they did this with one vote majority in the House and Senate in Arizona. We have I don't even know if there are Democrats in our legislature and we still can't get it done because Ed Inc. has a very powerful voice here in Idaho. And so many are afraid to piss off Ed Inc. That's a fact. So back to the debate. Here we are. Debbie Critchfield, her position last night or Monday night was completely unclear. Now I'm going to give you what she said in the KTVB debate last night. See if you can make heads or tails of this. Look at her first answer to, do you support some form of education choice? Here you go.
I think there are a number of ways that we address this issue. And for me, it starts with the fact that one parent's choice should not come at the expense of another parent's choice, that we have a very balanced approach. I look at the programs that currently exist where parents are able to make decisions for their children using public monies. Empowering Parent Grant, Advanced Opportunities are two of the ways. And so when we look at existing programs and again balance all of the interests here with the priority for public education, I believe that we can have the type of conversation and discussion we need to have to address this.
Okay, again, I've been doing this for 12 years here at the Idaho Freedom Foundation. I don't know what she said. I don't know. It sounds to me like she hired some PR folks to come up with a good answer that will say, hey, let's make sure that we support our government schools, which are failing, by the way. We'll get into that in a minute. But also bring the conservatives on board so we can score their votes. That's what's going. Now, interestingly enough, Terry Gilbert he looks like this friendly, almost Santa Claus type if he were a little rounder, but he looks like this friendly dude, right? He kept going at Critchfield again and again and again on this, gave her plenty of time to answer this question and to mark out a point and to carve out her position. She wouldn't do it. In fact, if you listen closely, she backed away from the conservative slash Republican position. There are two clips here. They're going to come back to back, and I want you to listen to them because again, she was given she was given lots of chances to give an answer. And here it is. Take a look.
I have not gone on record saying that I support vouchers. I have consistently gone on record saying that I support school choice, and I do. And I think one of the biggest efforts that we can have in Idaho is to recognize that Idaho is a school choice state already. That's not something that the superintendent, a new elected superintendent, is going to bring to the state. We were recently ranked third in the country by the Heritage Foundation for being free for education. And when we talk about how to spend this, I've consistently said we can't look at slicing up the same pie, that we look at other existing programs that are already addressing parental choice.
Once again, because of the direct reference to Miss Critchfield's stances on these, I want to give you 30 seconds to respond.
I have not campaigned on vouchers. I went through a very challenging primary with two other opponents. One of them was very vocal about vouchers and other things. That was not my position. That is not my position now. I do support school choice and believe that we are ready as a state to have a conversation on what that looks like when we're not defunding public schools, which is the constitutional charge here in our state. And as an elected official, I would honor that.
Again, what she's talking about is not education choice. First of all, she's backing away. Again, let's throw out the term vouchers because that's a leftist term designed to scare you. Basically, it means, again, like our food stamp program, you get to decide where you spend your kids' education dollars. That's all that means. If your kid needs to go to private schools, great. If your kid needs to go to some charter school, great. Some technical school, great. A pod, great, fantastic. What works for your kid is where we want those dollars to go. Don't be scared by the term voucher because Democrats just they have their polling, they have their PR spin doctors too. That's what we're talking about when we mean vouchers or when they say vouchers, right? So Critchfield had the chance to embrace the idea of education choice. She didn't. What she is trying to do is to have it both ways, to have her cake and eat it too. We have this big pie, and it's getting bigger, by the way, like tremendously bigger. Lots of money for public schools, for government schools. But we also have these other programs, and we can't defund or take any money away from government schools at all for any reason ever. Now, mind you, this debate comes the very week that we get our nation's report card scores, the reading scores and math scores and stuff for the 4th and 8th graders. They're terrible. Think about this. 33% of our 4th and 8th graders, roughly, are proficient in reading and math. Government schools are doing that. And yet we can't take money away from them to do something different. It seems like the Republican candidate is embracing the idea that more money will fix everything in public education. It won't. It hasn't. Idaho has been dumping, despite what you read in the press, Idaho has been dumping gobs of money into government schools over the last decade. I mean, Brad Little proudly bills himself as the education governor, right? Because every year he puts in another $140, $200 million into government schools. It's not working. Our test scores either are declining or they're staying flat. If you ran a business like that, you'd be fired. There's no outcomes. There's no improvement in outcomes. I digress. But I want you to look at the final clip from Critchfield last night, right? This was an interesting question asked by Morgan Romero, why in the hell is somebody who supported Boise Pride a debate moderator for anyone? I mean, you can go be a moderator for like The leftist debates, great, but an impartial moderator, Morgan is not. Absolutely not. We'll get to that in another episode. But let's take a look at this question or this answer from Critchfield. She was asked, "What does fund students, not systems, mean to you?" This is a phrase that's been popularized by Corey DeAngelis, who is the OG of education choice across the country. He's been instrumental. He's been here, but he's been instrumental in education choice packages getting passed in West Virginia and Arizona, as I mentioned before. Fund students, not systems. The idea that money follows the kid wherever the kid wants to go, wherever learning can take place and be effective. Here's Critchfield's answer.
What does the term fund students, not systems mean to you, and how would you work with lawmakers that are really pushing for that?
I view that statement as funding the programs that get to the student outcomes that we're looking for. That we're not funding a bureaucracy. We are looking at what are those programs, whether it's career technical education, vocational training, or the arts, or those things that students are interested in the classroom, providing the tools that our teachers need for a modern classroom, and all of the needs that we have in the 21st century. We want to fund students for their success, and that's going to look differently, not only regionally, but within various schools around the state, and being specific and very deliberate about where we put those dollars.
And as a follow-up question to that, if I may, you talk about not taking money away from public schools, but how would you do that in allowing school choice? How specifically would you do that?
Well, again, referring to the two programs that are already in existence, Advanced Opportunities is a program that students grades 7 through 12 are able to access currently. That money can be used for dual credit classes at private institutions. Those are decisions that students and parents are making currently with taxpayer money. So do we look at opening that up more broadly and extending that through kindergarten through 12th grade? Empowering Parents grants, again, supplemental decisions that are made with families on what helps that student. Do you add a line item to that? Those budgets are not a part of the current public schools budget.
That's not at all what fund students, not systems means. What Critchfield is saying here is, hey, we have these programs. That's system. That's part of the system, Ms. Critchfield. That's not at all what education choice is. No, what you're talking about is building a bigger system that bureaucrats have control over. They can attach strings to it. They can, they can shut it down. They can take it away. And by the way, everybody talks about the Empowering Parents Grant Program as if it's some sterling achievement in choice. It's not. It's a $1,000 per kid, I believe, or $3,000 per family max handout to pretend like we're giving choice. Yeah, school supplies are expensive, but maybe if you didn't tax us in the first place on some of these things, or you had lower income tax or sales tax rates, you wouldn't need to take our money and then give it back to a certain group. That's another conversation for another day. But that program, $1,000 per kid, cool. I can't use that at public or at a private school. That's not going to cover tuition. Tuition's like $7,000-8,000, which again, still cheaper than most public schools. So Miss Critchfield is completely off base here. And it's really disappointing because, again, remember the last 4 years, what we've been through as a state, school districts shutting down schools, forcing masks on kids, teaching them their pronouns and that there are 493,000 genders. The CRT nonsense, the social emotional learning nonsense. Parents want and deserve education freedom. And it appears to me, based on the last 2 nights of debates between Gilbert and Critchfield, neither candidate is willing to stick up for those parents. Thousands of families that want to do something different, that aren't satisfied with reading scores at 32% proficiency. That doesn't work for a lot of families, and it shouldn't. There's a vacuum in a leadership vacuum in Idaho's education arena right now. And it's too bad because a generation of kids will graduate. They won't be able to read. at their grade level. They won't be prepared for the marketplace. They won't be able to do math. And that will set them back financially for decades. Again, for the Idaho Freedom Foundation, I'm Dustin Hurst.